My name is John Van Lanschut. I'm the senior park aide at the Benicia Capitol as my little retirement job, and I'm as happy as can be, even though right now I'm kind of warm. Oh, tomorrow we're going to have the 170th birthday of the founding of the great city, historic city of Benicia, one of the original 8 cities in the state of California. And at the time in 1847, California was still part of Mexico.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hello.
Okay. Hello, hello. I saw you walking up. How are you?
I'm Dan Ryken, and it's my honor to be able to MC Benicia's 170th birthday. We live in an amazing town, and this program that has been assembled with the help of my friend Major John Van Lanschut and others. Please be mindful of all the help that he has, the docents and what have you. So we've heard the bagpipe music. Boyd Christensen, thank you so much. I'd like to also acknowledge the man in dress blues, my friend, Larry J. Miller. The program is going to begin now. We'll be starting with a little music, there'll be some poetry, some introductions of dignitaries, and then we have the great honor of hearing 2 of our best storytellers in town tell us some of the history of Benicia. We live in a very, very unique place, and we get to know more about it today. Our starting topic is going to be a song. The lyrics have been composed by Mary Susan Gast and Roger Straw. Wow. I couldn't read my own notes. That was from memory. Can I have coming forward Mary Susan and Roger.
I'm very happy to introduce this song to those of you who haven't sung it before. It was written for Benicia. It's actually been written at the request of Constance Butel, our famed videographer, who's putting together a video tribute to Benicia. So she will be recording all of you singing this, learning to sing it, getting acquainted with singing it this afternoon. If you are missing the song sheet, that's okay, because we really want you to be looking at the screen where the words will be superimposed over some scenes of Benicia. So if you can get it there, we'll have to give you one of these as kind of a souvenir copy. And there will be an introduction play, and then we'll join in. Am I out of the track? Good.
She is a teacher, an attorney. She puts on programs that celebrate the history of this house. And today, Annelle is going to tell us about Stephen Vincent Benet. We've had famous and wonderful people that have come through this town. Annelle.
Hello. Okay, I am going to be reading the invocation, it's not that long, from Western Star. Vincent Benet lived in Benicia as a child. He lived here from 1905 until the summer of 1911. Second, Western Star is about the westward migration, which is what produced Benicia. And specifically, it's about the people who were part of that westward migration, the people who lived and died, so that we could have towns like Benicia in the West. And third, the invocation mentions Benicia, so you want to listen for that. Not for the great, not for the marvelous, not for the barren husbands of the gold, not for the arrow makers of the soul, wasted with truth, the star-regarding wise, not even for the few who would not be the hunter nor the prey, who stood between the eater and the meat, the wilderness saints, the guiltless, the absolved, born out of time, the seekers of the balm where the green grass grows from the broken heart. But for all these, the nameless, numberless seed of the field, the mortal wood and earth, hewn for the clearing, trampled for the floor, uprooted and cast out upon the stone, from Jamestown to Benicia. This is their song, this is their testament, carved to their likeness, speaking in their tongue and branded with the iron of their star. I say you shall remember them. I say when night has fallen on your loneliness and the deep wood beyond the ruined wall seems to step forward swiftly with the dusk, you shall remember them. You shall not see water or wheat or axe mark on the tree and not remember them. You shall not win without remembering them, for they won every shadow of the moon, all the vast shadows, and you shall not lose without a dark remembrance of their loss, for they lost all, and none remembered them. Hear the wind blow through the buffalo grass, blow over wild grape and briar. This was frontier, and this your house was frontier. There were footprints upon the hill, and men lie buried under, tamers of earth and rivers. They died at the end of labor, forgotten is the name. Now, in full summer, by the eastern shore, between the sea mark and the roads going west, I call two oceans to remember them. I feel the hollow darkness with their names. Thank you.
You're first, Peter Bray.
It's a treat to be here. It's staggering to think what took place here 170 years ago, or 50 years ago, or 100, or even 50. I was asked to write something for today, and I refused to because the words of mine don't match those of Joel Fallon. I knew Joel starting about 2003. He was my friend and my mentor and an outstanding poet. As much as we say Stephen Vincent Benet, perhaps the year will come when we also say Joel Fallon in the same breath. This is a poem he wrote called My Town. My town is a river town at the edge of land, where Sierra water, tired from working in rice fields, meets the Pacific, then swirls off in current, fog, and cloud. My town's front yard is 3 miles wide with fishing boats and deep draft tankers. Seals play here, barking and calling at night, each to each. That sound sweetens the silence. The arsenal of my river town supplied rifles and cannon for skirmishes along the Snake, and Feather Rivers and Guadalcanal, and Yongdong-Po. In its time, an army town, a shipbuilding town with whores and hooligans, a town of rough edges, not yet all smoothed down. My river town is quieter now, and almost all the silvery shopping carts return to nest outside the grocery stores at night, when streetlights drip buttery pools onto the tilty sidewalks. Thank you.
The next poet is a friend of mine. We're all part of the First Tuesday Poets group. She recently performed at the Relic, part of the Pony Express program that we put on. She's an artist and a nurse. And I'm going to keep this short, but I did want to mention her dog and cat's name, Casalino, Valentino, and Zevi Presto. Hope I got that right. Gina Guzzo.
Hi everybody, I'm Gina and I am a part of the First Tuesday Poets group, and it's an honor to be here and perform a little poem for you. This is called Benicia, Who We Are. Named for a woman, the wife of General Vallejo, named out of love. That must have been a first. And yet we were first at many things, this small town. First military hospital in the West, the first U.S. arsenal on the Pacific coast, the first public school in California, and the first school for girls in California, the first Protestant church, and the first Masonic hall in California, the first law school, and the first hotel in Solano County, to name but a few. Who are we, Venetians? No, not Venetians. There is no canals or gondolas, but there is the strait and boats galore. Who are we, Venetians? Men, women, and children with some of the finest schools in California. Up 2nd Street to our industrial park, businesses, merchants, tradesmen, and more. Wind around to Lake Herman, to the area we adore. Who are we, Venetians? Caring community, parades, festivals downtown, cars and art and makers fair. Come to Benicia, if only you dare. Waterfront property, never to be missed. The first marriage in Solano County. Yes, this is where she was kissed. And still we bind together to stand tall to crude rail. 94510, it's Benicia's post mail. So small and mighty, yes, that's what we are. The little town of Benicia, a bright, shining star. Happy birthday, Benicia.
Monica Brown, 2nd District.
So good afternoon, and as a math history teacher, that's where I met John years ago. And one of the things for the kids here, you're walking on land where names that you read in the history books also walked. So General Vallejo, his wife Benicia, they walked this land. So when you're reading your history books, this is what I find very exciting listening today, was just how 170 years, and for United States that's old, but we know in the rest of the world it's not, but that's fine. So anyway, so my name is Monica Brown, I represent you, and I'm very honored, and I love the poet with crude by rail, right on, right on. So this is just a certificate to recognize the 170th birthday of Benicia, and I'm honored to represent you. I'm honored to be here today, and thank you, John, for calling my office and letting me know. I could have stayed at a convention in Sacramento, so imagine, this could have been can you imagine this looking like Sacramento? So be honored that, you know, somebody moved the Capitol. And the other is that, you know, wrong teams. Giants are playing and the A's are playing, but I came here. I came here. Oh yeah. I could have done the A's that we won last night. But anyway, thank you very much. I'm deeply honored to represent you, and Elizabeth is wonderful. You guys did great with Crude by Rail. There's a myriad of things we have to do. So we have office hours the first Monday of every month in the Benicia City Hall. Save July 3rd because that's the parade. Love you, but we won't be scheduling that night. But yeah, so please come, City Hall from 5 to 7. It's just drop in, come on by, just tell me what's happening, and we'll do the best that we can to irritate the people above me, which I love doing. So anyway, so thank you very much. Thank you, John, for reminding me to do that. So thank you.
Elizabeth Patterson.
It really is a privilege for me to be here today to celebrate this birthday. I'm wearing white because it was the color that the women's suffrage movement wore, and it was also worn by the first woman candidate for president. So it's important to me that we recognize the contributions by women, often neglected in history, and I wanted to make that point a little bit more subtly. What really gets to my heart about Benicia is the contribution that people from all decades have contributed to its wonderment, to its richness, to its hard work, and to its dedication to, in a way, to good governance. You don't often see that in the history of a community, but we do have that. And for instance, when Benicia became a city, that's a brand new city in a very, very young country. The country was an experiment. No other country had tried democracy since the antiquities. So we were a brand new city in a country that was experimenting with something that everyone said would fail. And when I say everyone, that's the English, who were only too happy to have us fail. The French, interestingly, Europe, Turkey, from whence I think the bagpipes come. Is that correct? Okay. So fast forward after Stephen Vincent Benet was here to another remarkable event in Benicia's history. During the beginning part of the Civil War, President Lincoln was very concerned about what was going to happen here in California. There were counties that were moving forward in becoming a slave county and petitioning the state government to be so. And we had a couple of neighbor counties that did that. And Lincoln was concerned that California could go slave. So he commissioned the Presidio, that is also part of what we all call the arsenal. And that was to secure the freedom of from slavery here. A lot of people think that Lincoln was really committed to getting rid of slavery, and that's why we had such a terrible Civil War, was based on that. Point of fact, Lincoln was really concerned that we could not work out our problems as a democracy. He felt that the issue of slavery was going to be addressed legislatively. He was totally committed to that concept. His biggest fear was that we would fail as a democracy. So the Civil War, while I totally embraced the concept of providing freedom for an oppressed people, that was really to keep us together as a democracy. I want you to kind of leave here with my message, which is our democracy is the most precious thing we have. And legislatively, we have provided for the slaves to be slavery to be abolished and to be given the right to vote. We've provided, through democracy, the women the right to vote. And we will provide for future needs that we have as a country. If we don't preserve democracy, we will not achieve that. So treasure your democracy and do what you can do every day to keep us whole as a democratic country. Thank you.
Assemblyman Timothy Grayson had called me and said he couldn't come, but he had this California Legislature Certificate of Recognition presented to the city of Benicia. I want to join with others in congratulating you on your 170th anniversary. Benicia has been a landmark in the history of California since its founding on May 19, 1847. Benicia has consistently played a notable role in California, serving both as a commercial shipping hub in the late 19th century and as one of the California's capital cities. Economically, culturally, and socially, Benicia has continued to be a positive impact on the community of California. On behalf of the people of the 14th Assembly District, congratulations presented on May 21st, 2017, Assembly Member Timothy Grayson, 14th Assembly District.
We are so fortunate to have the inspiration of Annabelle and what she does with Rowena, a way of bringing the world together through the unity of song and people of all ages. And I truly believe you're going to help change the world. Annabelle and Pepino.
I believe in that it's more than just singing. You know, I do what I call the Bovina Big Three with them, which is they have to say this almost like a mantra until they believe it. I always say, what's number one? And they say, accept the challenge. I say, what's number two? And they say, have self-motivation. I say, what's number three? And they say, have a hard work ethic. So they say that over and over, and those who stay in for years, it ends up becoming part of them. You know, which is really important, I think, for kids nowadays to have that internalized. And you know, I'm now teaching 150 kids in Bovina. Yeah. Okay, so I want to introduce first Pepino. He's going to play something for you, and then I will join him. And Pepino D'Agostino is from Sicily originally, and Benicia has been his home for how long?
18 years.
18 years. 18 years. And I met him because his daughter joined the group years and years ago, and now she's a filmmaker and also a singer. Just joined a band in Austin, Texas. So Pepino, he plays all over the world. We're very lucky to have him today. So here's Pepino.
I was born in Sicily. And when I moved to the States, I lived with my wife in San Francisco first for about 15 years, and then Donna, my wife, found a house in Benicia. We moved here and we raised our daughter, Elisa. And Benicia, if you translate that in Italian language, how many Italians are here? Nice, two. Means Benicia, Benicia means there's treasures. Really, that's what it means in Italian. There are treasures in Benicia. That's what it means, really. So Benicia, Beni means treasures. Cha, ha. So, and for me, it definitely has been a wonderful experience to live here, you know, and I see a lot of you at Safeway, Rayleigh's. I recognize faces, and it's a joy to be part of this community and celebrate this important milestone, 107 years. By the way, Italy as a country was formed in 1860. So it's as a whole country, because it was a divided country before that. So this town is older than my country. Yeah. Anyway, I want to play a piece that I wrote here. Inspired by this beautiful place, Benicia. This is it's a ballad called The Blue Ocean. Thank you. We're going to play maybe a couple of tunes together, and then the show will go on. We're going to play one of my compositions. By the way, if you're curious, I'll be playing with a wonderful guitarist on June 16th at the Benicia Historical Museum. His name is Adam Rafferty. He's a wonderful fingerstyle, funky player, Adam Rafferty. And so come over, June 16th. All right? Thank you. So we're going to play a piece that I wrote entitled Higher Connections, and Annabelle is going to help me out with this piece. Bye. Can you give me a D? So we'll play one more for you. So remember Boina, check them out. Amazing group from this beautiful town. And we love being here and being part of the community. And we're going to play another piece for you.
This is a holy place.
This is a piece that I wrote entitled Holy Many Smiles. And enjoy Benicia. My wife is telling me, no,
It's too
the
loud.
guitar is too loud.
I can't hear my violin. I
Yeah.
can stand right here.
Oh, on the bell, where's that? No, here.
All right.
Play for me, play something. There we go.
Yeah.
before we get to our featured speakers, we'll have two, but an introduction that's now possible. Joel Fallon's widow, Carolyn, is with us, and Joel's son, Chris, and Chris's husband. Tillis, great Tillis.
This actually reminded me of, I was kidding with John. He said one of these has brandy, but you know, we could be disguising gin or vodka in these bottles. And reminded me of the infamous legislature of 1,000 drinks, which was associated with 1850 and the first California State Capitol. And they didn't last too long in San Jose. Eventually, it ended up here, and I'll talk about that a little bit before I'm done today. But I think I can relate this to the early history of Benicia, because the early history of Benicia is very much tied to timing. And the actual event that we are observing today, the 170th anniversary, May 19th, 1847, this is a much larger and a much more festive occasion than the first one was. In fact, it wasn't an occasion at all. It was the day that a contract was signed, a contract between General Vallejo and the two founders of Benicia, Robert Semple and Thomas Oliver Larkin. And I believe they were given in this contract 5 square miles of what would prove to be very prime real estate. It wasn't prime real estate at the time. In exchange for a promise to build a city, to provide schools, to provide a wharf, and other things to promote this city. And I believe Vallejo was paid the tidy sum of $100. And that is the actual founding date, or the founding occasion associated with May 19th, 1847. What I want to do is to give you some context for that what proved to be a very significant event. We're going to talk about the founders, particularly Robert Semple, but also Thomas Oliver Larkin, and I'll say a few things about Vallejo, although most of those things I think have already been said in one context or another in this town. Robert Baylor Semple came to California at what proved to be a very significant time. It wasn't that apparent when he arrived, but it would soon prove to be a very significant transitional period of United States history, if not world history. And certainly very important changes took place relative to California, and then of course ultimately to this place, Benicia, California. Semple came from Kentucky. He was born in 1806. He was 39 years old in 1845 when he attended a lecture that was presented in St. Louis, Missouri by an individual. His name was Lansford Hastings. Hastings, I think, is best described as a promoter. He was trying to generate interest in Western migration. Now, Donnell made a reference in the Benet poem to this larger, very important force of westward movement, westward expansion of the United States. There was a very strong impulse at this time, particularly in the 1840s. It was sort of captured in the term manifest destiny. It was the manifest destiny of the United States to expand the blessings of American culture, American civilization from coast to coast. This was a very powerful sentiment. It was a sentiment that was expressed by opinion makers, journalists, expressed by political leaders. It was a sentiment that was strongly held by the President of the United States at that time, James Knox Polk. He's described by historians as a major example of so-called manifest destinarians. And Polk was very interested in expanding American presence and power to the Pacific coast. And he actually made a play for California in late 1845, early 1846, to try to acquire this very important West Coast area, particularly the Bay Area. with some action short of war. He tried to buy it. Mexico wouldn't sell it. He tried to foment some sort of spontaneous uprising among the small California population. That fell through. In the end, he resorted to the war option, and the United States would engage in the so-called Mexican War. It's more commonly referred to now as the Mexican-American War. The middle of 1846 to early 1848, that war resulted in the official transfer of California to the United States by virtue of that Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo that settled that war. The hostilities in California were limited. It was pretty much over in California by early January of 1847. At this time, there were a lot of so-called Anglo-Americans who had made their way out to California, and people were starting to position themselves, were starting to maneuver for potential benefit, potential power for themselves and their interests. It was in this context that Robert Semple, after hearing a very persuasive speech by Lansford Hastings about the importance of manifest destiny, about the important future of the West Coast as an integral part of the United States. This was actually right before the war began, but it was clear that the United States was likely to make a move on California one way or the other. And as I said, Hastings was also a promoter. He was trying to generate business. He had already led one expedition, so-called First Hastings expedition, earlier out to California successfully. He had put together a publication which many people eventually realized was full of worthless and in some cases dangerous information. It was called The Emigrant's Guide to California. When he gave that speech that Semple attended in St. Louis, he was trying to drum up interest in forming a second expedition or party out to California. And Robert Semple decided to join that party. Semple had been very active in his life up to that point, 39 years. He was a man of learning. He was a man of considerable talent. He had studied medicine, which eventually, formally studied medicine, and that eventually translated into the practice of dentistry. He studied law at the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. He was also skilled in printing. He was a surveyor. He even tried his hand as a steamboat operator. He had done a number of things. And apparently he was ready for something new. I guess we could call this a midlife crisis. Although 39 years of age in the 1840s was perhaps beyond midlife.
Jerry Hayes. The goodness of a nickel.
Okay, good afternoon. Nice to see you all. I want to first thank John for the kind invitation to make a presentation today, which he just told me will be a quick one. So we can get to that. Yeah, look at that. Get to the cake. I told him that I had only one condition today, and it is asked him if he would pick up the transportation expense from my home, but he absolutely refused. So when he asked me to come to the celebration, he requested that I bring a couple of stories, and but he cautioned me about delving into some of the lurid details of Benicia's past. And so I decided to keep it light, and the first story will be a tale of murder, and the second will be about suicide. So if anyone wishes to leave at this point, that's fine. That's really good. Anyway, I also neglected to tell him that I wish to go in front of Greg Tillis because you know, Professor Tillis is something else. He belongs to our society. He's the historian for our society. He gives at least one lecture a year in the spring, and it's very, very, very well attended, and I figured he's going to be a tough act to follow, but I'll do my best. So the first story that I have for you, and my tendency as an aficionado of Benicia history, having grown up in this town, is not necessarily, even though I like to work hard to preserve some of our landmarks, some of our buildings and so forth, the real history and the real fascinating history of Benicia is its people. And so my two tales today will be about some of the characters, some of the people of Benicia. And the first is a tale of passion and murder involving members of actually three prominent Benicia families. And it was described, the date is July the 9th, 1889. A day almost like today, midsummer, quiet Tuesday morning. It was described in the San Francisco Examiner of that day as, quote, Benicia in a ferment. And the ferment was right here, right in front of this old state capitol building and the Fisher Hanlon House, where this all took place. And I'll just quote a little bit from that article. Benicia was thrown in a fever of excitement at about 10 o'clock this morning, and a mad rush was made for West G Street, where a shooting scrape was said to have taken place, and in which J.E. Crooks, president of the Board of City Trustees, and in those days that means the mayor, because we didn't have a mayor set up in those days. We had a board of trustees, and whoever was the chairperson, he was the mayor. And he was also cashier of the Bank of Benicia, which is right on the corner, today called Sandoval's. He shot and possibly inflicted a mortal wound upon J. Page Wingfield, son of Bishop Wingfield, president of St. Augustine College. Now, to give you a little background of what brought this incident on, it was the outcome of a dispute following publication of a long article in the previous Saturday's Benicia New Era, over the signatures of J.E. Crooks and James Klein. And James Klein was a very well-known merchant in the city of Benicia, and some of his descendants still live in the Klein house right on the other side of Sandoval's. It is dated June 28th and is addressed to Bishop Wingfield. It reflected on the manner in which the diplomas of their sons who graduated at the last session of the institution, St. Augustine's College, had been prepared. The article recited that the graduating class of the college for the year 1889 consisted of Joseph F. Klein and John C. Crooks, and that their studies, conduct, etc., were satisfactory to the bishop and the faculty, and the boys were notified to prepare for their graduation exercises. The article further stated that on commencement day, in delivering the diplomas, the bishop highly commended the two boys and congratulated them on being, quote, in possession of the tools to fight the battle of life. And he expressed his pleasure in delivering to them the diploma of the college. Unfortunately, the diplomas handed to these two young men, which certified their, quote, completion of the course of study prescribed by this institution of learning, and that their scholastic attainments, industry, and moral worth entitled them to this diploma, yet written across the face of the diploma with ordinary ink was this message: this diploma does not include mathematics. So on the day in question, May 9th, Crooks was on his way from his home, and some of you may be aware where the Crooks Mansion is on the bluff at the corner, at the bottom of West 3rd Street, was on the way from his home to his place of business, and about the middle of the block met Wingfield, who was accompanied by Webster Clark of the college. Wingfield walked up to Crooks and struck him in the face. Crooks called for help, and none coming, he drew his pistol. Seeing this, Wingfield turned and started to run away when Crooks fired. Missing him, Clark then grabbed Crooks and a struggle ensued. And Wingfield turned and ran back. And as he came up, Crooks got free and fired at him again. The ball struck Wingfield in the abdomen. He fell to the ground, exclaiming, "I am shot." The wounded man was taken to the office of Dr. Gray, where he was attended by Drs. Gray and January. After an examination of his wound, they expressed the opinion that he could not recover. Crooks gave himself up to an officer and was taken to the office of the bank. All this ferment came to a head that quiet Tuesday morning, and young Major Wingfield lay dying. City trustee Crooks was in jail, and the reputation of St. Augustine College lay in ruins. Major Wingfield rallied for a few days, but died a few days after the shooting. Trustee Crooks was taken to the county seat in Fairfield and placed in the custody of the sheriff. At a subsequent hearing, he entered a plea of self-defense and was acquitted of all charges. He left Benicia shortly thereafter, never to return. However, his brother, William Crooks, shortly thereafter assumed the position of chairman of the city trustees and became mayor and served as Benicia's longest serving mayor. I was going to comment to Mayor Patterson, but she's gone, so it's okay. Nearly 50 years, because over that period of time, nobody wanted the job. So anyway, that is the story of ferment on West G Street and my story of murder. Now the second story I prepared at John's request is about Jack London. And as many people may well know, Jack London certainly has a history with the city of Benicia. Jack London was an extremely well-known, extremely well-written, talented writer who in his early years spent much of his days here in the city of Benicia at the bottom of First Street, mostly in Jurgensen's saloon. Anyway, since this episode, and as a matter of fact, my wife said, you know, Jack London's words are a lot better than yours, so this one you can read. But I did that when during my tenure as mayor here in the city of Benicia, I was invited one time to go to by the Benicia School District to participate in a literacy week and to come to one of the elementary schools. So I went to Mill School, which is now our city community center, and to read to some of the classes and so forth. And I chose this selection from John Barleycorn because of the fact that it had many mentions of the city of Benicia, and I felt it important that our children know that who Jack London was, a famous writer, and also that our city was well advertised in his writings. And when my wife heard what the subject was about, she was flabbergasted and scandalized and said, "You didn't really do that." And I said, "Yes, I did." So anyway, I will share that with you. And this is from John Barleycorn. Now, John Barleycorn was one of Jack London's, people think he wrote it while he was here in Benicia and doing all this drinking, but that was not the case. This is pretty much Jack London's autobiography, and it's about alcoholism and how the love of drink overtakes a person. I now made the old town of Benicia on the Carquinez Straits my headquarters. In a cluster of fishermen's arks moored in the Tules on the waterfront dwelt a congenial crowd of drinkers and vagabonds, and I joined them. I had longer spells ashore between fooling with salmon fishing and making raids up and down the bay and rivers as a deputy fish patrolman. And I drank more and learned more about drinking. I held my own with anyone, drink for drink, and often drank more than my share to show the strength of my manhood. When, on a morning, my unconscious carcass was disentangled from the nets on the drying frames, whither I had stupidly, blindly crawled the night before, and when the waterfront talked it over with many a giggle and laugh and another drink, I was proud indeed. It was an exploit. And when I never drew a sober breath on one stretch for 3 solid weeks, I was certain I had reached the top. Surely in that direction one could go no further. It was time for me to move on. For always, drunk or sober, at the back of my consciousness something whispered that this carousing and bay adventuring was not all of life. This whisper was my good fortune. I happened to be so made that I could hear it calling, always calling out and away over the world. It was not canniness on my part. It was curiosity, desire to know, and unrest, and a seeking for things wonderful that I seemed somehow to have glimpsed or guessed about. What was this life for, I demanded, if this were all? No, there was something more, away and beyond. And in relation to my much later development as a drinker, this whisper, this promise of the things at the back of life must be noted, for it was destined to play a dire part in my later wrestlings with John Barleycorn. And remember, John Barleycorn is alcoholism. But what gave immediacy to my decision to move on was a trick John Barleycorn played me. A monstrous, incredible trick that showed abysses of intoxication hitherto undreamed. At 1 o'clock in the morning, after a prodigious drunk, I was tottering along a sloop at the end of the wharf, intending to go to sleep. The tides sweep through the Carquinez Straits as in a mill race, and the full ebb was on when I stumbled overboard. There was nobody on the wharf, nobody on the sloop. I was borne away by the current. I was not startled. I thought the misadventure delightful. I was a good swimmer, and in my inflamed condition, the contact of the water with my skin soothed me like cool linen. And then John Barleycorn played me this maniacal trick. Some maundering fancy of going out with the tide suddenly obsessed me. I had never been morbid. Thoughts of suicide had never entered my head. And now that they entered, I thought it fine. A splendid culmination, a perfect rounding off of my short but exciting career. I, who had never before known girls' love, nor woman's love, nor the love of children, who had never played in the wide joy fields of art, not climbed the star-cool heights of philosophy, nor seen with my eyes more than a pinpoint's surface of this gorgeous world, I decided that this was all, that I had been all, I had seen all, lived all, been all that was worthwhile, and that now was the time to cease. This was the trick of John Barleycorn, laying me by the heels of my imagination and in a dream dragging me to my death. Oh, he was convincing. I had really experienced all of life, and it didn't amount to much. The swinish drunkenness in which I had lived for months, this was accompanied by a sense of degradation, and the old feeling of conviction of sin was the last and best, and I could see for myself what it was worth. There were all the broken down old bums and loafers I had bought drinks for. This was what remained of life. Did I want to become like them? 1,000 times no, and I wept tears of sweet sadness over my glorious youth going out with the tide. And who has not seen the weeping drunk, the melancholy drunk? They are to be found in all the bar rooms, if they can find no other listener telling their sorrows to the barkeeper, who is paid to listen. The water was delicious. It was a man's way to die. John Barleycorn changed the tune he played in my drink-maddened brain. Away with tears and regret, it was a hero's death, and by the hero's own hand and will. So I struck up my death chant, and was singing it lustily when the gurgle and splash of the current riffles in my ears reminded me of my more immediate situation. Below the town of Benicia, where the Solano Wharf projects, the straits widen out into what bayfarers call the Bight of Turner's shipyard. I was in the shore tide that swept under the Solano Wharf and on into the Bight. I knew of old the power of the suck which developed when the tide swung around the edge of Dead Man's Island and drove straight for the wharf. I didn't want to go through those piles. It wouldn't be nice, and I might lose an hour in the Bight on my way out with the tide. I undressed in the water and struck out with a strong single-handed overhand stroke, crossing the current at right angles. Nor did I cease until by the wharf lights I knew I was safe to sweep by the end. Then I turned over and rested. The stroke had been a telling tale, and it was a little time in recovering my breath. I was elated, for I had succeeded in avoiding the suck. I started to raise my death chant again, a purely extemporized song of a drug-crazed youth. "Don't sing yet," whispered John Barleycorn. "The Solano runs all night. There are railroad men on the wharf. They will hear you and come out in a boat and rescue you, and you don't want to be rescued." I certainly didn't. What? Be robbed of my hero's death? Never. And I lay on my back in the starlight, watching the familiar wharf lights go by, red and green and white, and bidding sad, sentimental farewell to them each and all. When I was well clear in mid-channel, I sang again. Sometimes I swam a few strokes. But in the main, I contented myself with floating. Before daylight, the chill of the water and the passage of the hours had sobered me sufficiently to make me wonder what portion of the straits I was in, and able to wonder if the turn of the tide wouldn't catch me and take me back ere I had drifted out into San Pablo Bay. Next, I discovered that I was very weary and very cold, and quite sober, and that I didn't in the least want to be drowned. I could make out the Selby smelter on the Contra Costa shore and the Mare Island lighthouse. I started to swim for the Solano shore, but was too weak and chilled. I gave it up and contented myself with floating, and I knew fear. I was sober now, and I didn't want to die. I discovered some of reasons for living, and the more reasons I discovered, the more liable it seemed that I was going to drown anyway. Daylight, after I had been 4 hours in the water, found me in the perilous condition in the tide rip of Mare Island Light, where the swift ebb from Vallejo Straits and Carquinez Straits were fighting with each other. A stiff breeze had sprung up, and the crisp little waves were persistently lapping into my mouth. And then the boat came. A Greek fisherman running in for Vallejo, and again I had been saved from John Barleycorn by my constitution and physical vigor. I could read on, but anyway, that is John London went on to live a very brief life. Only 3 years after he wrote John Barleycorn, he died in 1916. And some say there are rumors and all kinds of stories about him when he died that he committed suicide. But he had, on his adventures, gone to the Klondike, had really no support there and nothing to eat, developed scurvy, and then when he married his second wife, Charmaine, they traveled all over the world and got all kinds of tropical diseases in their various visits and so forth. So he had pretty well racked his body, not just with alcohol, but with his adventurous spirit. But my interest, of course, was that here again was a person who made Benicia very noticeable, contributed something very unique to our community. Certainly those families that suffered the tragedy of murder on West G Street did as well. And some are still here today, believe it or not. Bishop Wingfield went on. He was the Episcopal Bishop of all of Northern California at that particular time. And his college that he had started was a boys' college, like a military academy, went down the tubes after this particular incident. He lost his son, he lost his college, and he basically lost his career. And to those of you who don't know, we still have remembrances of Bishop Wingfield today. There's Wingfield Way, which is off Military West, near the site of the old St. Augustine College. So anyway, I'll stop, and we're gonna get some cake, I think.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Benicia. Happy birthday to you.
Hi, my name is Debbie West. I have actually lived here in Benicia for 40 years. When we moved here, we moved up on Capitol Street, which was a dead end. So we bought that house because of our children. We liked roller skating, and we opened up our garage, and we all skated through the garage and the street and back up to the garage. So every weekend we went roller skating, and this was our practice during the week. About a year and a half, this was 1977, and most likely a year and a half, 2 years after we've been here, we came home and there's a tractor and bulldozing their way through, and of course that's when Cambridge Rose Drive came into effect. And of course back then, at that time on Rose Drive, we had the problem of the dump and the poisonous fumes that came from the ground that made the people sick, and they wanted to sell their homes. And by this time, the homes are not for sale anymore because nobody wanted to buy them because they did not want to get sick. I have many other stories, but that's a good one for me. Thank you.
So this is Dan Smith and Catherine Pletz. And, Catherine Dixon. Got the last name wrong. And I've lived in Benicia for 30 years, and she's lived in Benicia for about 2 weeks. Right. And Benicia is such a wonderful place. We have such beautiful climate and beautiful geography that people stay a long time. So my most indelible Benicia memories are interviewing people who had lived here for a half a century or more, like a woman, Ruth Alexander, who talked to me about the 1909 earthquake and trying to catch the light bulb swinging in her room, or Harry Wasserman, who was still living in the house he was born in, 90 years before I talked to him. Just remarkable people who I shared a love for this town with.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for serving Benicia too.
My name is Susan Street. I've lived in Benicia since the year 2000, which is kind of a nice year, although I often feel like a newbie because people tell me they were born here, or they've lived here for 50 years, or they went to grammar school here. But I've been here for 17 years now, 18 years almost. Benicia is celebrating its 170th birthday. I am celebrating my 75th, and I can't think of a better place to be than Benicia because I love the town. The moment we moved here, we knew we belonged. I have met more people who are wonderful, and I live in a place that looks wonderful and feels wonderful, and Benicia is the place I'm staying. I love it.
My name is Bob Hitchcock, and I'm a Benicia resident. I got here 1972. There weren't any signal lights in town. There was one stop sign and a very small police department. I can remember one police officer. The fire department has just gone crazy. We got a lot of fire departments now. And up into the hills, all of those new homes up in Rose Drive and up in there, none of that was there when I moved to Benicia. And right across the street from me, well, down the hill and across the street, is a strip mall called Southampton Mall. That was where there were cattle. There were cattle roaming out in there to get their belly full. And so I've seen quite a few changes in the section of Benicia that would be on the north side of Freeway 780. And by the way, 780, I don't even remember that being there. So, yeah, there's quite a few. The old downtown part of Benicia, pretty much like it is, except businesses are changed so many times. And I'm glad we preserved the railroad building because my heart was really, when I was a little boy, I lived on the other side of the water, and my mother wouldn't let me come to Benicia. Benicia had a different name then. And so I used to look over at Benicia and wonder what the heck was going on over here. My mom wouldn't let me come over here. But anyway, I could have ridden the ferry boat from Martinez for 10 cents. And I remember the railroad bridge being constructed. That was 1930, 1931. I remember the first trains that came across Southern Pacific when they came into Benicia. All the ladies were dressed in their finery. boy, they really dressed to ride the train. And they would take the train all apart and put it on the ferry boat piece by piece and take it over to Port Costa. And yeah, I have good memories of this little town. I just love it here.
My name is Danelle Roubaix, and I'm sorry, but I can't remember the exact year this happened, but the entire California legislature came here to Benicia in the modern day. Jerry would probably know when this happened, but anyway, they came here and they had an official session in the Capitol, and I took my daughter out of school. I think she was in middle school at the time. She's now 28 in 2017, and brought her here. And it was just swarming with legislators, and I couldn't believe that like we were the only people from Benicia who were here, who were like in the audience, who weren't part of the festivities or anything. And I would say that we have gotten a little better since then in broadcasting important events like that, but it was definitely a very memorable experience.